attorney at law. And then he obtained his master's degree in public administration from University of Sri Jawadunpura. Currently, he is studying for his doctoral degree from Open University Malaysia. He is doing a thesis on performance, accountability, and parliamentary oversight of public enterprises in Sri Lanka. He joined the political arena in the early 1990s, became the deputy chairman of the urban council here in this area, Sri Jawadunpura Kotte. And then soon he was elected to the Western Provincial Council by receiving the highest number of preferential votes in that year, and became the chief minister. And he has also been the Minister of Agriculture in the province for some time. In the central government, he held various cabinet portfolios, including education and higher education, power and energy, petroleum, environment and renewable energy, before being appointed to this position of minister. In the political arena, he has also been an important leader by being the General Secretary of the UPFA, United People's Freedom Alliance, of the previous government for over 12 years, where he had to do a very difficult coordinating and integrative task as a political leader. He was elected to the UNESCO Executive Board in 2007, has been the chairman of the Sri Lanka Commission for UNESCO for many years, and also the chairman of many parliamentary friendship associations for Russia, for Cuba, for Japan, in Sri Lanka. So he's widely involved, and I believe you have seen him performing during the last few days in this conference. So he is the hope for science and technology and research and economic development in Sri Lanka. I welcome you, sir, on behalf of the audience. Then I introduce Madam Ramesh Vijayalakshmi, who is the Secretary of the Ministry of Science, Technology and Research. She obtained the bachelor degree in science from Bharatiya University in Tamil Nadu. Thereafter, she studied at Sri Lanka Institute of Development Administration, and then Open University Sri Lanka, where she obtained the graduate diploma in management. She has been the secretary of a few other ministries, the State Ministry of Plantation Industries, and she has been the chief secretary of the Northern Province, and the secretary to the governor of the Northern Province, and secretary to many other ministries of the Northern Province. And she has been trained overseas for many professional and administrative tasks, trained in international bodies such as ADB, GIZ, that is the German Institute for International Cooperation, JICA, and ILO. And she is one of the very able secretaries we have. In fact, in this audience, in our co-chairs, she is the only lady. So next time we have to have more women, I think, represented in this area. And she has been coordinating and providing effective leadership to the various institutes under the ministry. There are 12 institutes, and coordinating scientists is not an easy task. So she has been, I believe, in my viewpoint had been very successful during the last 2 months, where we had been working intensely. So, ladies and gentlemen, I leave the subject matter to the co-chairs and to Professor Tisavitarana to go through the presentations from various session chairs, which will be followed by the Colombo declaration. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Gunapala, for introducing the co-chairs. We are now in the plenary session, the closing plenary, and this is where the key messages from the concurrent sessions will be read out and displayed if there are any slides. For any comments, quick comments, and then we will make the final documentation later. So we had 5 sessions. STI for SDGs, citizen science, innovation ecosystem, emerging technologies, and nanotechnology. We had co-chairs, keynote speakers, and panelists, and rapporteurs who really took down notes, and these have now been collected by one chairperson, one champion, and that person will be actually delivering these messages right now, the key messages. To start with, I would like to invite Mr. Shehan Ratnavel to deliver the key messages from STI for Sustainable Development Goals. We need to limit our time to probably 5 to 7 minutes, and for any few questions that might come after that.
Honourable Minister Susil Premajantha, Minister of Science, Technology and Research of Sri Lanka, Mrs. R. Vijayalakshmi, Secretary, Ministry of Science, Technology and Research of Sri Lanka, Professor Tisavithana. My theme, as Dr. Noble has just said, is STIs for SDGs. And I will shortly, towards the very end of this session, be presenting the Colombo resolution, which to a large extent encompasses the role of development and Sri Lanka in the context of the SDGs. So I don't want to duplicate things. I will be relatively brief. In terms of the way forward, which I'm supposed to deliver now, given that all the breakout sessions in their deliberations would naturally look forward to how they should progress and address the way forward, my approach would be to quickly give you a summing up of each breakout session and make some basic implementation comments at the end. The first breakout under the theme STIs for SDGs is similar to the title, and it was STI Imperatives for SDGs. This session was chaired by Dr. Saman Kalegama, who noted that until very recently, STI formed very little basis in Sri Lanka's planning. In fact, he went on to say that the first 5-year plan of Sri Lanka after independence made hardly any mention of STI. He also noted the very low investment in Sri Lanka in research and scientific development, which is actually below 1%. Dr. Ahmed Fahmy of UNESCO in this session also emphasized the importance for technology, because he only noted that of the 14 of the SDGs, 14 of the SDGs make emphasis and place priority on the importance of integrating technology as a way of moving forward. Dr. Ravi Fernando emphasized the importance of getting the private sector involved in the SDG process, especially for countries like Sri Lanka, where funding was something which is something of an issue. So he found it very important that we should somehow get the private sector involved, but he cautioned, and there were a number of other speakers who also cautioned, that the Sri Lankan private sector is extremely conservative, and it has been very challenging to get them involved. He noted, for instance, that in the United States, the private sector is very forthcoming with funding for things like university chairs, but in Sri Lanka he mentioned the situation of an NDB once funding a chair in entrepreneurship. But generally speaking, the support for the private sector, especially in getting them involved in something like the SDGs, would be challenging. So in that context, I think it would be necessary to develop some kind of ecosystem, and it would be necessary to engage the private sector in moving our SDGs forward. The second session under the theme STIs for SDGs dealt with the issue of big data, and it recognized the vast contribution that big data could make to various SDGs and development processes, especially things like health and well-being. There was a very graphic, there was a very useful example and an analogy used to support this. There was the situation described of a doctor having a body in front of him, and the body was unconscious. Now, what would the doctor do with this unconscious body? But if he could access by means of a thumbprint, which is because the body can't talk, but the thumbprint was the solution, he could access all the medical data, the date of birth, the allergies connected with this body. He is then in a position to direct himself towards addressing some kind of diagnosis. So you see the importance of big data in addressing things like health, which form a very important part of the SDGs. In our session just beforehand, it was emphasized to me that in the context of big data for the SDGs, from a policy perspective, it is necessary to get the government involved in dealing with privacy issues in connected to big data to make it an effective tool to support our development and SDG processes. This third session, science diplomacy, although it's been around for 200 years according to the Royal Society, is a relatively new concept in Sri Lanka. So we are thankful for Dr. Famida Chowdhury of the US NSF to define it in accordance with the Royal Society definition. The definition she put forward was that science diplomacy really works in three areas of policy. You would first have a diplomacy, or rather science in diplomacy. That is advising foreign policy objectives with science. A good example would be Sri Lanka's stance on climate change. Sri Lanka's stance would obviously have to be advised by scientific means in terms of the effect that it would be having on our environment. So that would be a classic example, but the real purpose of science in diplomacy is in informing foreign policy objectives with science. Then there is diplomacy for science. That is improving scientific cooperation between countries using diplomacy, using our existing diplomatic channels to benefit from the scientific expertise and scientific cooperation and mutual research with other countries. The third area is science for diplomacy. That is improving relations between countries using science. Given the relatively short space of time, I quickly need to emphasize that Dr. Mario Pinto also emphasized the importance of connectivity. Dr. Harsha De Silva, the Deputy Minister of Science and Technology, emphasized that science diplomacy should support and not be divorced from the interest of the common man. He expressed this in the context of, and his concern for CKD, for instance, in Sri Lanka, where many people have come up with various theories, including cadmium, glyphosate, and so forth. Someone even spoke about it's just a question of salt in the water, but there is no effective solution. So he says it's important that science and diplomacy and science diplomacy should not be divorced from the interest of the common man. Having said that, there was an overall realization, especially in accordance with the Prime Minister's view expressed at the beginning of this forum, that there should be more FDI-related, STI-related FDI, foreign direct investment, and therefore, obviously, science diplomacy would play a crucial role in that engagement. The final breakout under the theme SDIs for governance, planning and foresight. The keynote speaker, Dr. Saritas, and Professor Ming Hao of the National Science Foundation of China emphasized the importance of innovation, an STI-led ecosystem to take science STI forward. There was also the importance and the stress of this ecosystem having a sort of bottom-up approach, so that you would be able to facilitate science from new inventions from the universities, from inventors at the bottom, so that there would be an innovation culture in the country. Finally, since we are talking about the way forward, the last session wanted me to emphasize, especially Dr. Gamini Kiriwala, that we should have an action plan. I think this has already been spoken of by Professor Gamini Nanakara, that we should have an action plan based on 3 months, and there should be interministerial committees and connectivity to ensure that this is the issues and the deliberations of this important forum and these sessions are taken forward. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Shehan. We go to the next one, which is the citizen science, and I'd like to call upon Dr. Sean Pereira to very briefly summarize what went on during the 4 breakout sessions. I would appeal to the speakers to limit themselves to about 7 minutes because we are running short of time. Thank you, Sean.
Thank you, Dr. Jayasuriya. Respected co-chairs, fellow delegates, ladies and gentlemen, I am here to report on the citizen science stream and the way forward that emerged from the deliberations in those discussions. There were 4 breakout sessions. The first was titled Community Involvement in Science and Scientific Research. The STI policy of the Sri Lankan government should promote, we understand from the discussions there, and encourage community involvement in science and giving assistance to scientific research. This encouragement may be conveyed to all sections of the society, rich and poor, initiated and non-initiated into science. Several projects that involve the wider Sri Lankan citizenship with science are currently underway. For example, a project to re-green parts of Jaffna. And there was discussion as well about the scope to adopt other contemporary international initiatives. To achieve these initiatives in a coordinated and integrated way that would benefit Sri Lanka's knowledge and economy, careful examination of the modalities need to be put into place. Encouragement by offering tangible incentives were also discussed as a possible way to put this forward. Also, trends, current social trends like apathy towards fieldwork based research needs sociological exploration. That was discussed in this session. The second breakout session, informal science education for the 21st century. Informal science education has a crucial role to play in the Sri Lankan government's agenda for inclusiveness, sustainability, and greater regional engagement, as Prime Minister Ranil Wickremesinghe mentioned at the 2016 welcome address for this forum. This is important because it aims towards taking Sri Lanka to a world-class innovation system in the 21st century. Currently, there are multiple trajectories for informal science education in Sri Lanka, and several planned for the near future as well. These need to culminate into one of the key representations of Sri Lankan culture, and like the Prime Minister said, alongside cricket. In order to achieve these goals, breakout session 1, after much deliberations and discussions, unanimously recommended that Sri Lanka needs to invest in the necessary infrastructure, in particular, a world-class interactive science and technology center that provides an informal science education platform for supplementing formal science education at primary, secondary, tertiary, and higher levels, as well as empowering inclusively the wider general public by spreading awareness about scientific issues through lifelong learning opportunities. Breakout sessions 2A and 2B involved science how it is presented in the media. The first session looked at using social media for discussions of scientific topics, and the other looked at communicating STIs. Our discussions combine these and present recommendations together. The traditional and new media that include both print and electronic modes, especially television, are already recognized as strong platforms of science communication with both expert and non-expert audiences in Sri Lanka. Several challenges to effectively achieve communication in these respective spaces were discussed, with the proposition of solutions to challenges in the print media deliberated extensively. It was acknowledged, however, that the paradigm shift that we are currently experiencing with new and social media has presented previously unknown challenges for science communication. To make these platforms more effective, we need to link with the Science and Technology Center that was mentioned previously, and to create safe spaces for difficult conversations in these venues. Relevant training of science communicators need to be done to enable that these communications would happen effectively and meaningfully. Additionally, we summed up all the above 3 points into some concluding statements. The Science and Technology Center will be a nexus for effective partnerships between schools, universities, scientists, other research institutes, and the Sri Lankan government. And this will lead to the creation of a rich human resource pyramid with a wide base that will help Sri Lanka to respond to the trilemma of the 21st century, that is economic growth, environmental preservation, and resource procurement, as was discussed at this forum. In order to respond to these needs, well-developed science communication must be an integral component of the Science and Technology Center. This would mean that different stakeholder groups, the groups that I mentioned above, can actively seek out participation in science and technology engagement opportunities that have been purposefully designed for meaningful interaction. Science communication in the Science and Technology Center should be directed by public interest, essentially through bottom-up approaches, like His Excellency the President mentioned at the inaugural speech. Thank you.
Thank you, Sean, for being very precise and to the point. Next one would be research and innovation ecosystem. And for that, I would call upon Professor Sirimali Fernando, Chair, National Science Foundation.
Good afternoon to all of you. Honorable Minister, Professor Vitharana, Madam Secretary. I'm pleased to say that the session on innovation ecosystem was, we had 20 resource people as chair people, keynote speakers, and panelists. I thank them all. And also we had the rapporteurs and so many people assisting the sessions, but we are grateful. We realize the ecosystem encompasses the entire innovation cycle, starting from ideation to research to technology development, upscaling, and commercialization. That whole chain has to be addressed. And it should embrace the people in all and their expectations. Now we are facing the 4th industrial revolution and beyond. It is changing. It is changing rapidly. The needs of the industry and the whole ecosystem, the needs of the ecosystem also are changing rapidly. Then it's imperative that we change the ecosystem, and we should be able to adapt to that change. Right now, it's not happening in Sri Lanka. We discussed the importance of strengthening the capacity, integrating and connecting all different actors and activities of that ecosystem to get a meaningful outcome. Whether we were talking of skills, infrastructure, finances, all resonated the same thing, that we need to address the different areas of the ecosystem in parallel. Adaptability also requires a different mindset. What we have today may not really help us in adapting to the needs of a changing ecosystem. And that is something we all should realize, the scientists, the industrialists, the policymakers, the bureaucrats, we all need to appreciate the importance of the need to change that mindset. And that change of mindset should allow us to work together. The university, industry, institution interactions are vital. The session on funding in particular noted that we don't have commercial bankers willing to invest in innovation at present in Sri Lanka, mainly because they are risk averse. And this is really a huge obstacle for things to move forward. But we were also happy at the same time to note that there were foreign financial institutions, especially from Japan, willing to be part of our ecosystem. And we need to explore those possibilities further. The session on intellectual property acknowledged the urgent need to rapidly change our National Intellectual Property Office to meet the increasing demand to facilitate shorter registration process. We understand that already steps are being taken to do this, and we look forward for early implementation. Even the leading universities in Sri Lanka find it extremely difficult to commercialize, mainly due to bureaucratic procedures in the present ecosystem that needs to be addressed. That needs to be addressed at the highest possible level. We realize we have the actors of the ecosystem working currently in a very ad hoc way in silos. But if we can make these actors to work together in a harmonized ecosystem and get them to work in concert, I'm sure the science, technology, and innovation could make a tremendous contribution to our socio-economic development. Thank you.
Thank you, Shrimali, for that once again precise presentation. Next we have emerging technologies, and for this I will call upon Professor Ajit Dialvis.
Okay, thank you. I need to use the power of the point, so I hope the let me have the PowerPoint. So key messages from the concurrent sessions, emerging technologies. Next, please. So we had 4 breakout sessions: electronics and robotics, biotechnology, space technology, ICT, and social innovation. And 2 plenaries, because we believe that there were a lot of information that came from these 2 plenaries. Advanced materials, ICT, and smart transport machines, materials, and human beings. Today's one, there are things, so it's technically, the third one need to be taken into account as well. And we know that some of these inputs are still flowing in, so there is this is not complete, but we are building on as the inputs come in. And nanotechnology, which is, of course, we talked about as a new industrial revolution, is considered in the next tract. You may have seen this poster
which was displayed. And this was kind of stimulate, because when we started on these emerging technologies, the 12 institutes under the Ministry of Science, Technology and Research, how actually they can take on these 12 disruptive technologies. In a sense, championing across Sri Lanka, how do we get this? So this was kind of, so for mobile internet, next generation genomics, for automation of knowledge works, Internet of Things, advanced robotics, advanced materials, 3D printing. Sri Lanka just had the world's first printed wedding dress. Energy storage, in an actual wedding too. Energy storage and autonomous and near-autonomous vehicles, cloud technology, advanced oil and gas exploration and recovery. So only the last one, probably this symposium and the gathering didn't touch upon. The rest came into the discussion at some point across most of these, though we are looking at this particular track. So these are like the identified 12 disruptive technologies that are happening right across today in the world. In this tract, we witnessed some very interesting things. We also had 2 mini discussions after 6:30 and 7:30. After sessions were over, so those were also plugged in. SERA discussion, that is Center for Excellence in Robotics Application, which is now rolling with Ministry of Science, Technology and Research and Ministry of Industries and Commerce at IDB, giving that innovation space. Then Ministry took another leadership position in supporting the launch of the NIBIA, which is National Biotechnology Industry Association, and we had the launch on the first day and the kickoff meeting yesterday evening. So strengthening this, how to position emerging technologies beyond policy into the execution stage. And then electronics sector talked about in the track how to get this $1 billion revenue as a revenue industry to Sri Lanka, moving on from the current position in few hundred millions to that 1 billion and going beyond. And it was mentioned that this is quite feasible. And also in the biotechnology sector, it was mentioned that doctors may not be there in future, but just an algorithm. And so maybe just we need to look at the STEM education seriously, because specifically mathematics is falling. And the STEM is very, very, very important to get schools into the science stream. Science education needs to be strengthened, and doctors is not an occupation anymore. So the personalized medicine from your home garden was discussed, and it's almost possible, but it's a long shot, it was mentioned, but it's interesting. Then issue of human capital of the sector was discussed. We have about 574 biotechnologies. In the electronics segment, it was discussed. We have 100 plus coming out, about 300 plus coming out, but most of them go outside, or some of them just migrated to different occupational spaces rather than doing the engineering side of it. So this issue was discussed because we produce, but we just don't get the return from that investment. And today morning we heard about that there are 2 genotypes for even for robots, that some are very interested in eating, some are interested in reproducing, and of course we understand the reproduction is through the IR ports. So it was very interesting how the world is changing. And so these are the things that are discussed. I mean, it's mind-blowing in some way, but we need in Sri Lanka, we need to understand and be partners in this change too, perhaps leading to. So in the ICT and social innovation, it was mentioned about the need to understand the importance of data science. We give all our data to some of the mobile operators, including both sides of the identity card and everything, but we never make use of the data in a serious sense. And so everybody every day collects data, but we never really utilize the data that we collect. And that was an extension of that innovation dashboard. I mean, the concept of we seriously need to, it was stressed. Then supported, of course, by the image processing technologies. And a lot of ICT development for social benefits. You talk about lots, in a sense, even how to disrupt the public administration system by looking at flexible work times, working from home, clocking in with smart cards. There's so many opportunities. I mean, these are social innovations because they're not primarily profit motivated when you introduce it. It improves the quality of life, but it adds value, but not in a direct sense of a profit to a particular place that you are heading to. So it's called, in a sense, social innovation. And also mobile broadcasting for disaster management, because once you have your mobile, it's in the mobile, then you don't look at some of the technologies that you need to support. Even with a disaster, things are working, and you have access and you have the communication. So stress was mobile broadcasting. Electronics and robotics, one thing that was stressed was that the bridging finance schemes, like, because there are a lot of things in electronics that are happening, but it's not reaching the market. And sometimes you need some superior design and quality to get it in the international markets to make it competitive. We have seen some of the products that are really very good, excellent in engineering, but maybe the packaging is not that excellent, so there is this issue. So they talked about, okay, the problems exist at the marketing end, and how do you get government to look at bridging finance? And also looking at technologies that Sri Lanka may be very, very interested and capable of, may be also useful, but sometimes the United States may not be doing that because it's not really relevant at this stage for them. And we also have an innovation concept called reverse innovation for that. The certain new innovations emerge from the developing economy, and then at the end of the day, they find their markets in the developed economies. So reverse innovation is today very much happening, and we can play a role. And in medical devices, this is very, very, very important, and it's been shown. So then also select technologies that have widespread impact on society and support them. So there are these 3 segments of technologies that one can work on in policy and then in execution. There was, of course, a master plan that stays in the electronics mindset, and Ajit Pascal may champion that. This 1 billion rupee investment plan. What the electronics manufacturing they talk about in the EDA, electronic design automation, and government has already spent some, I think about some 100 million into the university system, in specifically Moratua, but the next stage is not happening. So what they say is this 1 billion is not a 1-year investment, but over a 5-year period. And they believe with such an investment, is a rupees 1 billion investment, you get a US $1 billion return. And that is the kind of the argument this electronic group is coming through. And having the ministry now supporting biotechnology in that sector, perhaps this is also something the ministry can lead on in taking pushing this investment plan with human capital being available. And can SLIMIA, also Sri Lanka Electronics Manufacturing, can also find its way into the Ceylon chambers and then get a high-tech cluster like NIBIA, SLIMIA, and so on. So electronics, the biotechnology and nanotechnology, then you have an industry cluster which brings in the high-tech into the traditional Ceylon chamber, but then we see a transformation that can happen. So government must understand the value and the opportunity for such investment, not just look at incremental developments. In biotechnology, the ministry supported the NIBIA, and we saw the launch and the kickoff, and ministry is looking at and supporting the biotechnology innovation park, the manufacturing park at the megapolis in the science city. So already we talk about a 70-acre system. We don't probably need to match the scale in India. We just don't have the acreage to match the scale. We just have to have the big ideas and an attitude. And that was shown by the Vega in one of our sessions in the that if you have your smart, hard-working, and the attitude right, you can take the Elon Musk of the world too. So what he was in the one of the sessions was talked about in the electronics was that attitude and the need to have that hard-working mentality, so you can take on the roadsters, and it's not a problem, right? They went way to do that. And then the research and manufacturing nexus, bringing these two together was really highlighted. And biotechnology specifically is in that opportunity because of the SLINTech. So triple hexagon, 1 hexagon for nanotech, 1 hexagon for biotech, and 1 hexagon for the ICT, the information tree. So you will have this triple convergence can happen at Homagama for realized triple convergence. And of course, can the government give pioneering status for nascent manufacturing industries? Government need to take up some of the risk, and perhaps you need to carve out a more strategic enterprise investment scheme looking at giving this pioneering opportunity to the industry. We need manufacturing to generate jobs and to run the economy. So space technology is very passionate at Arthur Clarke Center, and so we have they came out and they showed how much National Space Tech Development Program is going for National Hub for Receiving and Redistribution of Earth Observation Data. Sri Lanka is playing at Homagama, it's coming through. Then the Nano Satellite Program, and it was mentioned by Dr. Ego that in Samara that how nano satellites is the only possible type of satellites perhaps that you can do it even at a university and then can benefit so many things. So he was saying, okay, the other satellites you can't just do at a university, but a nano satellite can. And this was stressed. So once you can do that, and even with a very small amount of investment, your opportunity space is much enhanced. So Arthur Clarke Center is involved in a nanosatellite program. And then specific domain-specific collaborative research, which they are doing with Russia, and space technology applications. They have this link, and it was shown in this particular track how they are going to move about it. And it was again stressed, the human capital development, because the speaker from Russia, Dr. Igor, was talking about in Samara being a space city, space university, the space city, and they're kind of, the students from the young age, he was showing the video clips about they moving into the informal science education and seeing the rockets, kind of, that was vital, because then you grow up with such knowledge and the interest. So it was mentioned on this, the nanosatellite, so it's supposed to be from the 2016 to 18 program, so we hope the execution within the time plan to happen. Need to pick up from a plenary on CERN and Sri Lanka, because ministry, the Honorable Ministry is there. We had run Professor Visavitharana too in this, the two ministers. It was sometimes mentioned when the ministers visit, they don't like to see some of these the very scientific things, and here we have two ministers of science and technology actually going down and seeing some of this hardware. And I think it's a tribute, because it was mentioned by some of the, normally the overseas political figures do not visit such things. They just move to a meeting and go on. Here, they're all wearing hard hats down in the Heldron in the tube. So expression of interest on collaboration signed by the ministry, and then participation, again, the ministry championed on this, to summer students, and it's interested to enhance this program. It was again interesting to notice how the theoretical physics is talking about a 25% global GDP contribution, right? So we normally don't take up sometimes theoretical subjects, saying it's not what theoretical we need the applied. But here you see, if you want to be disruptive, you have to have your fundamentals right. You cannot be disruptive without having your fundamentals right. So international cooperation agreement is in preparation. Dr. Voss is here, and hopefully before he leaves, it may be an opportunity to the ministry to sign this agreement with him in place, and that will be another significant step, where Dr. Voss stressed the three important things: education, education, education. And it's precisely that this particular agreement is in line with. So finally, smart transport came in. It's a combination of these emerging technologies can move in, and the speaker there was very, very vocal about the BRT, the bus rapid transport, a worldwide success, and his space for Colombo and so on. Go with this model, right? And he paraphrased Kumaratunga Munidasa, and so that's the final sentence to take from this track at this stage: the nation which does not arrange its transport in an appropriate and sustainable manner will not rise. So that was Giorgio's message in his final, learning from Kumaratunga Munidasa. And we need to embed emerging technologies, and we need to have policies moving towards execution. That's the session theme. Thank you.
Thank you, Ajit. The final message would be from nanotechnology, and for that I would call upon Professor Michael Kelly.
Could I have the slides, please? Co-chairs, delegates. The session on nanotechnology was more like what I call a conventional science meeting. We discussed a lot of the detailed science, but in the last session we gathered to think of some of the key things about the way forward. And this is a report prepared by Ravi and myself and a group of others who sat in that last session. And the main points we want to make are the following. What's happened there? Something's... Can we get that up at full screen? Have I done something wrong there? I hope I haven't done that. Anyway, the point about nanotechnology, while this is coming up, is that the scale, it's a subject which is about 20 years old in its current form, and we can see at least another 30 years to go. And the scale of international research, public research funding is on the scale of billions. And if I remind you that the world budget for R&D, including private sector, is about $1 trillion, you can see that $1 billion of public funding on that scale, or several billion, means it's an important sector. And it's also one now that's having an impact. So between 2012 to 14, the sales of nano intermediates grew from to nearly $500 billion, whereas the nano-able products had grown up to about 1.6 trillion. So this is a large part of the world economy. Most materials and living matter are in fact designed from the nanoscale upwards, and this has implications and applications in all sectors of the economy. So it was quite fair that the last session left a large chunk for us to discuss. It's also important that many of the structure-property relations, that is, how does some property of some material depend on the structure. As we know, in the case of butterfly wings and fish scale, there are no pigments there. That's all entirely due to nanoscale optical features, the sort of thing we see in an oil slick in a much more varied environment. And of course, many products owe their place in the international market because of the scale of nanoscale properties. So we want to make that particular point first about what we know. The way forward is in two parts. One is fairly generic. We looked at what are the key issues, and at the moment, metrology is one. Being able to measure sufficiently accurately what's going on in one nanoparticle to the next is important as we understand the structural property relations of individual particles and their performance in aggregates. Also, the improvement of that control of structure for manufacture. We had a very interesting talk this morning from a delegate from Greece, showing reel-to-reel manufacture of plastic electronic systems where the degree of control is really truly remarkable. And so one of the things that we'll also be seeing more and more of is nano-engineering for manufacture at large scale. Much of the work in the laboratory is making picograms of material, and when we want to make kilograms of this, we need different technologies, and so nano-engineering is going to become increasingly important. One of the things we also looked at is the possibility that unmet societal needs exist where nanotechnology might provide a solution in the generic areas of energy, water, food, and medicine. And the other thing we discussed, which is a real concern, it has been for some years and is the subject of much work, is an established toxicology. We know that, for example, asbestos owes many of its dangerous properties to its actual shape and size, and it's not clear that this might not be true elsewhere. Now, we finished with a discussion on the current landscape and nanotechnology and Sri Lanka. We've got Slintech, we've got university research groups and research institutes, and we reckon there's probably about 200 professionals now. Somebody with a better finger on that may be able to come with a precise number, but that by any standards is a healthy community. And the specific local topics and opportunities are of nano-engineered fertilizers. We had a simply wonderful talk to the last one in the session. I was extremely impressed. Indeed, in fact, I've been really impressed by the session we had was about half indigenous and half international. And I have to say, the quality of the talks was uniformly high, and there was some very fine work locally going on, which I can highly commend. Materials for energy, including solar, water purification, smart textiles, natural medicines, and structural composites. Now, the thing that's key about all of these is that these things offer the potential for local economic capture. And I think that's extremely important. The fact that you can take something, it's the same thing in New Zealand with geothermal. There's a lot of work done there because if they invent something that makes a difference, they put it straight out in the field and get use of it. These ones here all point to particular local problems which they're solving. And then we started out to look at specific new opportunities, and we thought, no, that there's quite enough going on and to develop the success of that. But then we wondered whether, since Arthur C. Clarke started here, whether his space elevator might be one of those wacky way out ideas that might be pursued here. But I want to just finish by saying that we had what was a very exciting meeting that could have been held anywhere in the world. And there's some very good local things which I strongly commend to the ministers and to the public community at large. Thank you. just one final thing. I was the first scientific speaker to speak on a topic on the Wednesday evening, and I think I'm probably one of the last to speak before the Colombo thing. So I just want to offer, on behalf of all the scientists here, a great thank you to the minister, you minister, and all the ministers and the government for A, the wonderful hospitality, and B, the ability to showcase everything that's going on here. It's been truly exciting, and on behalf of all the scientists, thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Professor Kelly. Professor Tissavitarana, Secretary to the Ministry of Science, Technology and Research, Dr. Noble Jayasuriya, visiting scientists, heads of institutions, academics, professionals, ladies and gentlemen. If I come to the next item, you all witness that Mr. Shahan Ratnavale, Dr. Sean Pereira, Professor Sirimali Fernando, Professor Ajit Alvis, and Professor Kelly made their presentations about with the summary of 5 main sessions. So, if you want to make any comments over these summaries, you can send it by emailing to our organizers, referring to Dr. Noble Jayasuriya. We welcome your suggestions, comments over this forum. So, I believe that you all agree with the presentations made by 5 resource persons today, summarizing the 5 main sessions and 23 technical sessions. If you have any amendments, please raise your hand, and you can suggest that amendment. Otherwise, we can approve the Colombo Declaration as it is and approved by. Yes, and it is available in the website. Audience silence, so then we decide that all agree to the Colombo Declaration, and I declare the Colombo Declaration adopted unanimously by this forum. And yes, the resolution will be presented by Dr. Shahan Ratnavale.
Honourable Minister Susil Premajayantha, Minister of Science, Technology and Research of Sri Lanka, Mrs. Vijay Lakshmi, Secretary, Ministry of Science, Technology and Research, Professor Tissavitarana, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. As conveyed at the outset of this forum, we have thought it appropriate to crystallize our deliberations at what, in a Sri Lankan scientific context, is a landmark event by passing what we have termed the Colombo Resolution. This resolution, to use its full title, the Colombo Resolution on Science, Technology and Innovation for Sustainable National Development, is mindful of the development challenges faced by Sri Lanka, our commitment to the Sustainable Development Goals, SDGs, and the role of science, technology and innovation in addressing these goals and challenges as discussed by this forum. I will shortly present the Colombo resolution for your concurrence. But before I do that, to both avoid confusion and also by way of an interesting aside, I wish to distinguish our resolution from a few other instruments and mechanisms that have used Colombo in their title. The first would naturally be the Colombo Plan, which was conceived at the Commonwealth Conference of Foreign Ministers held in Colombo in January 1950. This initiative for the economic and social advancement of the peoples of South Asia and Southeast Asia has a membership of 27 nations and a secretariat in Colombo. Then there is the 1998 Colombo Declaration on Media Freedom and Social Responsibility, the 2013 Colombo Declaration on Sustainable, Inclusive and Equitable Development, passed at the Commonwealth Heads of Government meeting, SHOGM, the 2014 Colombo Declaration on Youth, and the 2008 Colombo Statement on Food Security. These are some of the main initiatives that make reference to Colombo, and while there is a 1992 Colombo Resolution on Children, there is no statement, declaration, or resolution from Colombo that calls for such a detailed and comprehensive approach in respect of science, technology, and innovation for sustainable national development. The primary intention of our Colombo resolution is to spur the incorporation of science, technology, and innovation STI in Sri Lanka's development. Accordingly, I wish to make some brief explanatory comments before highlighting on a clause-by-clause basis. With respect to the first clause of the resolution, we note that for the first time, the UN's development goals place official emphasis on innovation. Hence, item 1. We, the participants of the Science and Technology for Society Forum Sri Lanka 2016, recognizing the holistic approach adopted in the formulation of the UN Sustainable Development Goals, SDGs, and that the importance of innovation is highlighted in goal number 9 of the SDGs, agree that STI, whether it be scientific or social innovation, is a key driver of sustainable national development. Secondly, in Sri Lanka, we have seen many of our Asian neighbors surpass us on account of our earlier low investment in scientific research and development. The high technology component of our exports is only 0.9% vis-a-vis on recent figures, Thailand 27%, Singapore and Malaysia around 50%, and Korea, which approaches around 75%. Whilst we are keen on STI for economic development, we believe that such development be inclusive, and having been blessed with a beautiful country which supports a thriving agricultural and tourism industry, underline that STI should support economic growth in an environmentally sustainable manner. Hence, item 2. We believe that economic development should go hand in hand with social and environmental progress. Hence, we appreciate the key role that STI plays in the improvement of industrial processes, industrial output, and driving industrial and economic growth, while at the same time recognizing that STI plays an important role in ensuring that industrial processes and output conform to protecting and managing our environment in a sustainable manner. Thirdly, the structuring of nanotechnology as one of the 5 thematic pillars of the forum indicates the emphasis placed by Sri Lanka on harnessing new and emerging technologies. In addition to a well-established Sri Lanka Institute of Nanotechnology, we have commenced setting up a center of excellence in robotic application, and land has been allocated for a biotech park. Hence, item 3, which reads, we recognize that new emerging technologies such as biotechnology, renewable energy, data science, robotics, and nanotechnology may be harnessed for economic progress and poverty alleviation. Fourthly, we see technology, in particular information and communication technologies, as not only facilitating knowledge, but as penetrating socio-cultural barriers that stand as impediments to social and gender equality. Hence, item 4. We see STI and social innovation as being linked and complementary, and may work hand in hand to support socially related SDGs such as quality education, gender equality, reducing inequalities, and peace, justice, and strong institutions. Then we address the key role of STI in food security, healthcare, water sanitation, and pollution control. Also, in view of Sri Lanka's megapolis plans, aiming to create a megacity to match the hubs of Dubai and Singapore, we recognize that STI may support this initiative as well as the enterprising port city or financial city project, which involves an extension of Colombo's central business district on 233 hectares of land reclaimed from the sea. Hence, item 5. We recognize that STI may play a significant role to assess the attainment of SDGs, including those related to zero hunger, good health and well-being, clean water and sanitation, affordable and clean energy, and sustainable cities and communities. Next, we note that the government of Sri Lanka has signed the Paris Agreement and is therefore committed to developing processes to mitigate environmental-related climate change. Further, as we have seen the effects of climate change, such as droughts, flash floods, and landslides, we are conscious that new technologies will assist such mitigation. Hence, item 6. We note that in addition to the support provided by STI to enable cleaner processes that mitigate environmental degradation in the context of the SDGs related to climate action, life below water, and life on land, new technologies relating to space and satellite communication, as well as remote sensing, will also assist the attainment of these goals. We then wish to emphasize the need for policy and planning changes in developing human capital to support STI in national development plans. Hence, item 7. We are concerned that there may be a current mismatch between development priorities as stated in national development plans and budgets and the role of STI and STI practitioners in the development process. We see an urgent need for requisite alignment by developing and sustaining the human capital required to incorporate STI in sustainable national development. Finally, the clarion call of our resolution: to foster STI through a developed ecosystem. We see this as key to furthering STI in Sri Lanka. Hence, clause 8. With the above in mind, we therefore call upon all policymakers, scientific practitioners, and legislators to foster STI through a supportive, innovation-led ecosystem that includes advocacy, appropriate policies, adequate resourcing, international partnerships, and investing in people and institutional capacities in order to facilitate and achieve sustainable national development. Ladies and gentlemen, there you have it, the Colombo Resolution in its entirety. I will shortly leave it to the Honourable Minister of Science, Technology and Research of Sri Lanka, in his capacity as chair of this session, to proceed with the formality of passing the resolution. However, as I draw to a close with a few more lines of observation, I reiterate that this resolution is aimed primarily to spur Sri Lanka's sustainable national development, or rather to spur the incorporation of STI in Sri Lanka's sustainable national development. However, given the significant international presence at this forum, we thought it appropriate to share our resolution on a very informal basis with key development practitioners in the UN in New York to provide some quick feedback as to whether this resolution may become quotable internationally. The response we received was that it was a very good resolution, but its significance would depend on our implementation. So, ladies and gentlemen, this indicates that the ball is clearly in our court. And maybe, therefore, I should conclude by saying that we look forward to your contribution in placing Sri Lanka on the global STI map by taking the Colombo resolution forward. I thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Shahan Ratnavel, for presenting Colombo resolution. I hope all the participants who gathered here today agree to all the to Colombo resolution. Yes. Thank you. So I announce the Colombo resolution is adopted. So I invite the former Minister of Science and Technology, Professor Tissa Vitharana, to make his comments.
Minister, Secretary, Dr. Jayasuriya, friends, I must say that I am gratified and optimistic after the STF Forum and the enthusiasm that it has generated and the Colombo resolution that Sri Lanka will be able to face the difficult challenge that is before us. We are a small country, a small market, and therefore we have those limitations. We are a less developed country. We have reached lower middle income levels, and we are caught in the middle income trap, I think, which we are all familiar with. That is, countries can come up to that level by the fact that they have cheap labor and thereby be competitive on the world scale. But once you get to this level, to take the next leap forward and become a developed country, labor is not the answer. We have to become effectively competitive in the world market on the basis of technology, on the basis of innovation. And when we, as Shehan mentioned, our high-tech content in our exports is less than 1%, whereas countries like Japan, Korea, Singapore, Malaysia exceed 50%. So if we are to effectively develop our country, we have to have high-tech, advanced technology, value addition to our raw materials, make maximum use of our human resources, our natural resources, our agricultural resources in the interest of our country. And during the time that I was minister, I tried very hard to get this message across and to get the necessary funding. One of the unfortunate factors in our country is that the necessary funding has not been made available. When you look at the way other countries have gone ahead, there has been firstly large-scale government or state funding, and it is only later on that the private sector capital inputs have come in and supported research, development and innovation. And from the point of view of promoting the private sector, our development banking is extremely weak and inadequate. We have to strengthen that area. And these two together, the state funding plus development banking, is essential to provide the funding that is necessary for us to develop STI, and it is through the development of STI that we can become a developed country. So this is the challenge that is before us, and we are really at a bad point in history. The 2008 global economic crisis, from which it was believed we were emerging, and that by this year, 2016, we would emerge, actually has not materialized. The economists in America even have said that this year we might see another 2008. So it is in this context that we have to become competitive in a diminishing world market. And this challenge is a tremendous challenge. And I'm glad that the Minister of Science, Technology and Research has had a broad outlook which has resulted in this forum, in this resolution, and which I think with his dynamism we will be able to take forward, not easily, it's going to be difficult, but if everyone cooperates, if all the partners, the stakeholders work together as a team, I think we can make it. And I am optimistic that following this forum and with this resolution, we will be able to get there. And I wish the Minister and all of you all success. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Vitarana. So I take this opportunity to congratulate all of you for having a very successful series of scientific discussions in this forum. Today, at closing sessions, we have here more than 400 participants. That is over 60% of the inaugural sessions. It is very satisfactory because I have personal experience by attending many international conferences. At the final sessions, you find less than 20-25%. So thank you very much for your continuous support for the success of this forum. The 3 days of fruitful work have produced ideas, guidelines, and conclusions which are summarized and presented in the document of Colombo Resolution. The Colombo Declaration from now on will be the blueprint that guides our science and technology development efforts in Sri Lanka. I consider this is a great achievement. We had a historic gathering and you had shown us the right way for the future. This wonderful forum would not have been possible unless His Excellency the President of Sri Lanka, Maithripala Sirisena, and Honorable Prime Minister Mr. Ranil Wickremesinghe took an active and supportive role for many months. The government of Sri Lanka is now embarking on a number of key reforms programs. There will be a new economic development policy framework in which science and technology will be a key driving factor. There will be reforms in our constitution of Sri Lanka which will include reforms of managing and administering public institutions and public services. We are doing our best to ensure that our scientists and professionals come forward and occupy important roles in policy formulation, decision making, and institutional development. Our scientists must be in the core human resource groups who will drive our country's programs of change into the future. My ministry will take the steps necessary to implement the conclusions of this forum. Among the many steps that we have already planned, I will appoint cross-functional teams to articulate programs of action in key research areas. These teams will have representations of various groups of scientists and professionals and administrators from appropriate ministries and institutions. We will work with the ministries in the areas such as agriculture, industry, enterprise development, education and skill development, health and environment. Within a few months from now, we must have yet another forum of scientists and business community to work out our plans of technology development, human resource development, science and technology infrastructure planning, and public-private partnerships for technology transfer. This task will be the responsibility of the National Science and Technology Commission, who is now organizing for the scheduling of its bi-COSTI program. In the meantime, the Coordinating Secretariat for Science, Technology and Innovation, COSTI, the brainchild of former Minister Professor Tissa Vitharana, and COSTI and my ministry will be networking with you to obtain inputs. I take this opportunity to recognize the contributions made by all of you to make this forum a success. Special thanks goes to Professor Gunapala Nanakara, Professor Ajit Alvis, Dr. Nobel Jayasuriya, heads of institutions, especially the chairperson of National Science Foundation and other institutions, and all our officials, and the event manager, the staff of this Waters Edge and Hilton Hotel and other hotels who provided accommodation for our scientists and scientists who came from overseas. I hope all participants had a pleasant stay here and wish safe return to their respective destinations. Thank you. So I call upon our secretary to make final remarks. Right.
Thank you, and I don't want to take much of your time because I know it's almost 2 o'clock. Now we are in the end of the session, and we are very happy on the other hand because we got a very productive document, the Colombo resolutions with us, which shows a pathway to incorporating science, technology and innovation into the development strategy of our country. The other hand, we know we are holding a greater responsibility with us because we should ensure the findings of the Colombo Declaration should be operationalized. So, because we know that there are a lot of stakeholders involved here, and we hope, like this workshop, we will get more of your support, stakeholder support to implement all these findings. And this Colombo Declaration has been achieved with the contribution of all of you. So it's a great joy for to say a very big thank you to all of those who have contributed one way, the other way, the other to make this forum to success. The keynote speakers, the international and national resource persons have brought here with them and shared with us their knowledge and experiences. You have guided us in the right direction, and we appreciate that, and we understand that you have taken time out of your very important schedule to contribute this forum. Thank you for your invaluable contributions. And representative from the research organizations and universities and the industries officials have actively participated throughout the sessions. We noticed that it is what was expected, and we would like to see this kind of close cooperation in the implementation of the process as well. And I wish to thank the students who have attended this session and express your thoughts with us. Before concluding, let me express our thanks to the our Excellency the Presidents and Honorable Prime Ministers and other ministers who have supported to us. And finally, let me put our record on our tributes to our Minister for his guidance and encouragements throughout these arrangements and final sessions concluding here today. And I wish to say good luck to you all and safe journey as well. Thank you very much.